YouTube, obviously.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this afternoon's session. I'm joined by Marc and Kasai from Fujinon. How are you guys doing today? You okay?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
All good. So today's session, we're going to be looking at everything Fujinon and basically exploring the design and coatings and everything and just what makes a Fujinon lens Fujinon. So I'm going to hand over to the guys.
Okay, thank you, Jake.
Oh.
Hi, so hi everyone. Thanks for joining us online, either live right now or possibly re-recorded, which would still be right now to you. So my name is Marc Cattrall. I work for Fujinon here in the UK, and I'm basically responsible for all things Cine. And I'm joined with my colleague Hideyuki Kasai. You introduce yourself?
Okay, so my name is Hideyuki Kasai. Thank you for your time to join this conference meeting. I'm a product manager of optical device of the Europe, currently working in a Germany office. So my position is kind of between the market and R&D department in Japan. So, we are listening the customers' feedback and the feedback to the R&D to planning to develop the next generation product. So this is kind of the my main job.
Thank you.
Okay,
and so today what we're going to talk about is really what goes into the look of a Fujinon lens. Now, Jake is watching out on the YouTube comments. So if you have any questions, just add them in there. And if Jake can interject if it's kind of relevant to the flow of it, but we'll also have a moment at the end where you can ask any other questions as well. So we're going to get started straight away, and I'm going to start off with a little bit of history, basically, just to give a bit of context for what we're going to be talking about today. So Fujifilm, which used to be called Fuji Photo Film, was established in 1934, so it's been more than 85 years. And the original mission was to develop motion picture film and to be the first in Japan to develop motion picture film. And since then, we've introduced several films such as the A250 and Eterna, which have released many awards, received many awards such as Oscars and engineering Emmys. Soon after, we set up our first glass factory. So we started making lenses 80 years ago. first camera, which was a medium format camera, which was 70 years ago, called the Fujinon 6. It was introduced in 1948. And then the first computer to come to Japan was not by Sony or Hitachi or one of those companies that you might assume. It was actually made by Fuji. It was called Fujic, and it was the first computer in Japan. And basically, its purpose was to perform calculations to help with highly complicated lens designs. And even today, some of the simulation program from this computer is still part of our core lens design process.
So you mean still using?
Not using that exact computer.
I know.
So, and then what that really just brings me on to this final slide about the history, which is really just to really reiterate that two of our core competencies are optics and color science. We've been in these industries for a very long time, and we've tried to use as many of the expertise that we've gathered over many decades to continue to develop products. So here is our cinema lens timeline. So we started in 1999, so more than 20 years ago, with the C series and E series, moving through the Premieres, Cabrios, the Alluras that we made with Arri, Cabrio, MK, and then finally we launched the Premista last year. And here's just a selection of credits for the Premista lenses. I don't think many of these are out yet, but these are all productions that have used Premista lenses on them. There's more as well that we're not allowed to talk about, but hopefully when we can, it will be pretty impressive stuff. And just a few credits from our Premiere and Cabrio series. As you can see, quite widely used and quite CGI heavy as well, just because of the nature of the look of the lens, which is something obviously we're going to be covering. And then I've saved the best to last because I love the retroness of this advert. Oh no, I built it up too much. That's unfortunately that's not showing, but for some reason this was a slide showing a lot of productions that use the C series and E series. So they included a lot of Robert Rodriguez movies, such as Sin City and Once Upon a Time in Mexico, plus also Star Wars Episode 3, and also some early James Cameron before he then also used them on Avatar as well. But I really wanted to show the retro-looking advert, which I seem to have a technical glitch with. Apologies. And just to quickly give an overview about our current Fujinon Cine range. So we have the Premista range, which are the latest lenses. They are for large format cameras, PL and LPL. They are Premiere quality for Vista Vision, which is where they get their name from. And they also have extended data, which is something that we're seeing more and more popularity in productions. Next up is the Premieres. So these really are your ultimate zooms for Super 35. They are the fastest zooms in their class. That lens you see there, which is roughly to scale, is an 18-85 T2. You may have seen these around on high-end productions. There's a Cabrio range, which are essentially a balance between high performance and size and weight. So they're slower T-stop to the Premiere range, and they have removable drive units, which also have an encoder in for metadata, which is something we'll talk about a bit later. And then our lowest range, I'd say, in terms of price at least, is the MK. Now, the MK range are made for short flange focal distance cameras, which basically allows us to make them much lighter and much smaller, but with still very, very good cinema quality. You can see that there's, down the mount column there, you can see that there's what the native lenses are for. but there's also third-party conversions, and actually a slight issue that X should actually be a native. There is a native X mount version of the MK lens as well to use with Fujifilm cameras. And then this is an overview of the focal lengths. So you can see that within each of the different ranges, most of the popular ranges focal lengths are covered. And what I've done with this graph is lined up the scales so they're roughly similar in terms of angle of view. I'm actually using a 1.55 crop, which is similar to what you get on a Venice from 6K to 4K. So you can get an idea there of how wide the wide goes and how long the long goes. Now, those are the ranges separately, but these are now things that cover all the ranges. So obviously they're zoom lenses, and you can obviously benefit by saving time, changing lenses, or using remote heads to allow for social distancing. They're all high quality optics, which we'll show some examples of soon. They're all color matched, and Kasai will explain what that means and how closely matched they all are in a short moment. They're all built on years of experience, which is essentially what I was saying in the opening slides about how long our company has been running and how long we've been producing these products in this market. And they're all robust, serviceable, and reliable, which is very important because we all know what it's like actually on a film set. So getting to the real reason why this presentation is on is talking about the cinematic look of a lens. So the first question really is, how do you define the cinematic look? This is something that for a lot of people, it is very subjective, or certainly what's good or not good is very subjective. It can depend on the DP, it can depend on the project, there's many variables, but you can really define it. And these are the characteristics that we believe make up the look of a lens. Obviously, I won't just sit here and let you read those. We're basically going to move through each of those 10 points and show you some sample images. So they're just still images taken from a short film that we had produced last year. It was shot by Tobias Schleiser, and it was all shot on the Premista 28-100. However, everything you see here is reflected through our entire range. So we'll start with, I guess, the most important part, well, depending on what you're doing, but one of the most important parts, which is the color balance. So Kasai, explain to us roughly, in your own words, what makes the color balance in a Fujinon lens?
So this is a kind of combination between our own recipe of the coatings and also design with different material of glasses. So then make sure we can reproduce pure white without color shift. So maybe a couple slides, we have some comparison chart.
Yeah. So the next part of a look really is the skin tone. Now with this skin tone, obviously this is going to be based on our experience making motion picture film, but I understand this. So this is more like a balance of the contrast, which is something we'll get onto in a moment, resolution, which we'll come to in a moment, and also the focus fall off, which is also something we'll come to in a moment. So organic skin tone is obviously one of the most important parts that make up the look of the Fujinon lens. So coming back to color balance, if you can take over and tell me when to click.
Okay, so the graph on the left side, so this is the coatings characteristics of the graph. And vertically, you can see transmittance. So means higher number you can see, higher transmittance means more light goes on to the sensor through the lens. And horizontally, you can see wavelength, which is white color combined red, green, and blue. Okay, so this is a comparison picture. Line in the purple, this is our very old lens characteristics of the coatings. And color in yellow, this is our cinema lens. So as you can see, so newer coating, newer design of the lens. So the transmittance is higher than previous one. So which means more light goes onto the sensor. And also the color balance, the light in the purple, more light in red goes to the sensor, but the newer coatings are more balanced between red, green, and blue. And can you click to show the CCI chart?
Yep.
Okay, so this is a kind of the chart. You can see the shift in the white. Okay, maybe one more click.
Yep.
So dot in green, you can see. So this is very close each other. So this is our white balance. So if close each other, it means even if you change the lens of our Fuji lens, not much shift in the white balance. So this is some of the dot coming from the MK, and some of them comes from Premista. So during the shooting, and if we use the lens, still keep same white balance, not the same, very close white balance. So the dot in yellow, so this is the other lens. So they are close each other, but if compare with them, our lens is much closer in the white balance. So maybe one more click.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, our lens, I'd like to say, close in the white balance in the each series.
Yeah. Okay, so the next characteristic really to talk about is contrast. So we have a few example shots from the Tobias film, and then we'll talk about the things that go into the lens to enable this to happen. So the first, as I said, first character really is that the lenses are able to capture very high contrast. They also have very much a controlled cinematic lens flare. So that's not to say that they don't flare at all, because obviously they do. But when they flare, the flare isn't causing the black levels to lift. It isn't causing ghosting. It isn't causing, parts of the image to be kind of taken over by the flare, which then can't be fixed in post. Similar to what I just mentioned, there is very suppressed ghosting. So again, we'll talk about what helps cause that in a moment. And it's very, very good black levels. So the black levels are very, very low. So Kasai can explain a little bit about what goes into that.
Okay, so this is one of the example how we testing. So top left picture, as you can see, shooting the black object, and if behind the black object is very bright, easily you can see the floating the black level, like showing on top right picture. So black is not black, already floating the black level, and makes it gray, not black. So the top bottom left, this is a simulated picture. On the right side, so there's a sensor, and the left side you can see 3 glasses. So actually, just showing the last 3 glasses, rear element of the lens, and the line on the yellow. This is unwanted light. So as you can see, this light goes onto the sensor. So actually, this is bouncing inside of the lens barrier, or some of the light bouncing from the coating, and makes floating the black level. This is why line in the yellow, so many lines you can see. So this is making the flare. Okay, one more click. And we are designing with special design of the lens cell, and also special design of the retaining ring, which is holding the glasses. And these mechanical parts also cutting off the this kind of unwanted light, then making sure this kind of light not goes into the sensor, and our lens can deliver the pure black. So the picture on the right side, top side is the original picture, and the bottom one is shoot with our cinema lens. As you can see the reach in the black, so reproducing the purely black level. So this is very important for especially shooting the cinema.
Okay, so we're going to make a slight apology for the next slide. This was rushed together quickly, but this is a really good way of using a waveform monitor to just demonstrate this again. So Kasai, if you just want to explain.
Yes. So this is done by collaborate with one of the DOP, very rush. We installed the color chart in front of the LED light. So actually on the yeah, so color chart in front of the LED light. So this is a waveform monitor on the center. So you can see black and the white level. So, okay, so before that, I should mention. So left side of the picture and the graph, waveform monitor graph, this is our lens. And the right side, this is one of the prime lens. Okay, so the black level and the white level is same at the moment. Okay, and if increase the intensity of the LED light behind the chart, maybe you can click. So as you can see, intensity is going up on the back side of behind the chart. As you can see, white level is same between Fuji lens and the prime lens, but black level is floating, depends on the intensity of the LED light. So this is just we made a similar situation as picture we showed in the previous page. So this is an example with 50 millimeter. So as you can see, prime lens black level is floating. So which means you're losing this kind of tone, black tone. This is one of the example.
Okay, and then these slides here are now to just demonstrating the difference from ghosting and also the black levels. So you can see on the left-hand image, there's an element of ghosting in the middle, which has been reduced on the right-hand side, which is the Fuji Cine lens. Obviously, the black levels of her dress have stayed low for the reasons that Kasai has just explained. So there's still detail in her dress. And then you don't have this kind of this extra flare at the end in the bottom corner. Is there anything else to add to that? Or I think you've covered everything.
Yes. So yeah, to make it clean in the image, so this is combined with not only coating, not just design of the lens set, also the edge of the glass, and also yeah, many ways to simulate. So this is reason we can make sure the clean in the image and still have good amount of the flare.
So the next next part of the lens to talk about is distortion. There's very little visible distortion on any of our lenses. So this shot here, you're looking at the 28 to 100, I believe at 28 mil. And I've got just an example video that I can show, which just shows it's actually a different lens, but it's the widest lens we have in our range. So it's quite a good example to show. So on the left, you have the ZK 14 to 35, and on the right, that Japanese writing just says PL prime lens. So you're not missing anything there, don't worry. As you can see at 14 millimeters, you know, the prime and the zoom were very much in contention with each other. But if we change it to 20 millimeters, and then it should zoom in. And now you can see here how well the ZK performs, actually outperforming a prime lens at 20 mil. So obviously, you know, no lenses really are absolutely distortion free. If you can measure it, you can correct it. But we're very impressed with what our factory has been able to do in order to, bearing in mind these are zoom lenses and how much extra complication that comes into it to make sure that there still isn't any distortion. So the next part of our character really is that there's no visible color aberrations. Do you want to explain this?
Yes. Yeah, so this also comes from the totally of lens design. So mixed with the design and combined to the lens glass material to make sure even no visible color aberration. So this is very important, especially for the high dynamic range shooting. So because sometimes will be visible in the monitor.
And then lack of lens breathing. So you'll see this little moving clip on repeat here. Now this is an incredibly long focus travel here. It's going from infinity to maybe 1 meter from the camera. And I believe this, well, again, this is down to the way the lens is designed, the way the focus group moves within the lens, very much down to taking our experience in zoom optical lens design to its absolute nth degree here. And then the last sort of part of the character really is the bokeh. And again, we've got a couple of technical slides that Kasai can explain about how this works. But from an aesthetic perspective, especially with more people shooting large formats, it's more important that the outer focus bit does look attractive, but it shouldn't look distracting. So to us, it's very important that firstly, that the outer focus area doesn't have any anomalies or anything wrong with it, but also how the focus falls out is very gentle and very gradual. We don't want it to be sharp and then completely blurred and gone. So it's quite a gentle focus fall off, which matches quite nicely with, in this case, so this is the Premista, this matches very nicely with lenses like the Zeiss Supremes and the Arri Signatures. So Kasai?
Yes. So on the picture on the top, this is the top left. You can see that called a ring bokeh, or some called onion ring. So this effect comes from the glass surface, with especially from the spherical glass. When you're shooting with a large format, so depth of field will be shallower than Super 35 shooting, and the background picture is very important. So this is why we try to reduce this kind of onion ring effect. And the right side, this is the result. So we make sure surface of the glass, even the spherical surface, is accurate enough and clean enough to reduce this kind of effect.
Okay.
Also, we newly developed the 13 blade iris. So if bigger number of the iris blade, you can get a more natural bokeh. So because circle will be dot will be close to the circle if increase the number of the iris blade. So the left side, this is a 9 blade iris, and the right side 13 blade iris. So as you can see, more close to similar to the completely circle. Without, you can see the edge.
Yeah. Okay, so the next slide isn't going to be a pretty picture from the film. It's going to be just a short film of a test chart, and this is one last part of the character of the lens. Essentially, our philosophy at Fujifilm is to create the best quality lenses possible, which includes resolution power. And obviously that means if your bucket is full, you can remove from the bucket by using diffusion or filters or anything in post-processing. But this short film, and it's literally 20 seconds, just will show you side by side, again, our 14mm lens, just to zoom right in on the test chart and compare it to a prime, and you will see for yourself how well the lens is resolved. So as you can see, firstly from the black level is slightly improved from the ZK, but aside from that, there's very little discernible difference. You certainly wouldn't be feeling like you're shooting with a compromise lens by using our zoom instead of a prime. Do you have anything else to add for that, Kasai?
No, that's okay. So you can go to maybe next slide.
So that's basically, that's the kind of hopefully that's explained pretty much what our philosophy and what our look is of the lenses and how we have achieved it. So the next thing we just wanted to talk about quickly was, actually, I don't suppose, Jake, there's been any questions yet? Just
there hasn't at the moment, mate. No, but yeah, anyone on YouTube, if you have any questions, just let us know.
Yeah, that's no worries. So just really, next thing is just to talk a little bit about zooms in general. So the first thing to mention really is obviously the BFC, the British Film Commission. They have published their working safety guidelines this week, which has been had government sign off as well. And there's two parts from there, which I've just brought out here. And this is obviously these are recommendations rather than there's nothing mandatory here, but just considerations to keep in mind when considering what you're going to be shooting with, that obviously zoom lenses will allow you to control the lens from afar and not needing to get close to the talent or close to maybe the focus puller who might be closer to the camera than anyone else. So obviously it's just a reminder really to bear in mind that, especially hopefully with what we've just gone through and shown how the lenses perform, that these could be viable considerations during the time while we're going to have to shoot under slightly different working conditions than normal. And then to talk about it further, because this guy can introduce it much better than I've got a very short film that I'm going to play, which was an interview video with William Wages, who is an ASC cinematographer. He shot a movie called The Forgiven a couple of years ago now, and here he talks about his use of the Fujinons and the zooms and everything about them in his own words. So I'm just going to play this now. Do we have sound, Jake?
There should be. I'm going to double check on YouTube now. I don't believe you've got sound on YouTube. I didn't double check on Streamlabs what it's going through, but at least you've got subtitles. People can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a message from audience, no sound.
Is this video on your guys' like Vimeo or YouTube at all?
It is, yeah.
Okay, I'll try and find it. I'll put the link in the chat for people.
If you can see the comment of the PowerPoint, the link to it is there.
Okay, yeah, but I can't do anything at the moment because of the way we're doing it. So yeah, I'll do it on my iPad and put it on the chat for people.
Okay, but yeah, if you pop the link in there, we'll keep moving then, instead of people watching a video on mute. Recommend watching it, and also recommend the film. Very good film as well. So let's move on. So really the last subject to talk about today is lens metadata. So it's nothing new, as I'm sure you all know, but it is something that is very important and is another potential body on a set with data wranglers, etc., or just something that can possibly be forgotten about. So lens data is something that we see as quite important, and we see as continuing to get more important where VFX and virtual shooting, etc., becomes a bit more prevalent. Here's just a quick image of a lens data box that we created for Mr. Lucas back in 2004, 2003 perhaps. Yeah, 2003. And luckily, things have moved on a little bit since then. So this is the /I technology, where you get continuous remote readout of exit pupil, the absolute focus position, zoom, the iris position, things that are useful for either doing pickup shots in the future or for your VFX team to understand which bit of footage come from which camera, etc. In the Premista, there is an internal encoder which passes this data through the mount hot shoe to the camera. And in our Cabrio range, the detachable drive unit is connected via a hot shoe to the lens, which basically then passes the data through to the hot shoe to the camera. So the encoder is actually inside the drive unit, which is another reason why the lenses are very small and lightweight, is because they don't actually have that bit in them. And then in addition to just to be clear as well, the Cabrio supports ARRI LDS1 as well as Cooke/I. And then in the Premista lenses, there is also the Zeiss extended data. So, Kasai, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, for the Premista, in addition to /I, we also support the extended data. So as you know, so this is a kind of the next generation advanced lens data metadata system, which include shading data of the lens and the distortion data. This will be enabled to skip the, how can I say, making the lens file. So make easier on the post-production, especially for the VFX shooting. So currently, we only have a beta version of the firmware available on the lens. So, but maybe within a couple months, we will release final version of the firmware, and also can be recorded this metadata onto the right now trans video Starlight HD can record the metadata. And as you know, Sony just introduced the version 6 of the firmware, which will support our metadata system, extended metadata system with our lens.
On the Sony Venice.
Sony Venice, yes.
Yeah, and we've also been talking to Red about, because both the Venice and the Red cameras support Zeiss extended data from primes, but in order to have them updated to work on zooms, that's the change that they need to have. And theirs is planning, nothing's been confirmed yet, but I think we were looking maybe around September or October. So hopefully by October this year, both the Venice and then the Red Monstro and Ranger will all support this. So the shading and distortion data is going to be passed through real time just via the lens hot shoe. And then, as Kasai mentioned, yeah, the third-party devices, if you don't have a lens with the hot shoe support. So that's kind of got to the end of our sort of presentation. I don't know if anyone has got any questions, or Jake, maybe you've got a question.
Yeah, there's no questions on YouTube yet. I guess the only thing I can kind of think of is what do you guys see as next for you guys? Like what lenses have you got ideas about? What feedback from customers have you had about what lenses could be interesting for you guys to make next? Obviously within what you guys can obviously say.
Yeah.
So officially I cannot say anything, but you remember maybe third page. So you saw the graph comparison of the focal length, so between Premista and the other zoom lens. So maybe somewhere, if we can see the space, maybe we will introduce something.
Sorry,
Mark,
I'll jump in there.
I did correct answer.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, obviously, just as we should do, we continue to look at the market, look at the trends, look at the cameras that are coming out, and obviously, COVID-19 has caused a massive disruption everywhere. But we know that that disruption will be resolved at some point. But just as Kasai said, what we do really is we look at our existing range and our existing lineup, and we just try to consider what the market needs to be. And it's not just our own consideration; it's also talking to rental houses, talking to DPs. And I think with even once production resumes again, we believe that large format, for example, is still going to carry on being utilized, just as it maybe not as much as it was previously. And as Kasai mentioned, we've got, there are gaps where our Super 35 ranges cover from a wider to a longer. So we're definitely considering what we can possibly do with the Premista range. And we're also trying to consider what we could possibly do for maybe FX9 users and sort of lower end, should I say, full frame customers. But everything is just very much under consideration and always being reviewed, even more so because of the current climate of uncertainty for everyone involved at the moment.
Yeah. We have one question on YouTube from Frosty Flake. I'm interested in how lens metadata can be incorporated into time of flight sensors, which is interesting.
You ask time frame?
Oh, sorry?
Sorry, could you repeat?
So interested how lens metadata could be incorporated into time of flight sensors. So
this.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so this is depending on the device.
Yeah.
Which recording the metadata. So metadata system can be combined with a picture frame. So for example, the trans videos starlight will take the not the general signal from the camera and always combine the picture and the metadata. So each frame can record the lens metadata. So this is am I answering right?
I believe so. It's I think because time of flight cameras, they're not used too much with existing metadata options. So I'd be interested to see how you'd probably need to speak to Cook or Zeiss in terms of how exactly that would implement into whatever camera it is that you'd be using.
Yeah, I'd say because we were really firmly wanted to use an existing protocol rather than be another company that makes another system. So obviously we've been working very closely with Cook to be an iTechnology partner, which has been great, and then also working with Zeiss now. So I think that's really more where that question's probably better directed. We're using the standard protocols that they give us to try to make sure that is much compatibility, so DPs aren't restricted by certain lenses, certain cameras because of compatibility, etc.
100%. Do you think these larger mounts are going to stick around? How could you see mounts changing and evolving over the next 5 years? Because I know there's been a few articles and videos floating about online at the moment talking about it, and I'm just interested to see what you guys think in terms of, do you think LPL is going to be adopted? Do you think stuff's going to go towards the shorter flange distance stuff like L and RF and all these new mounts that other companies are introducing?
I think obviously, I mean, our MK lenses are a really good example of what you can do in terms of performance and size and weight when you're using a shorter focal flange focus. Obviously, a native LPL lens with a shorter flange focus is going to give you some of those benefits, not to the same degree as using an E-mount, which is what the MK lenses were built on. I think it's 23 millimeters is the...
I think it's 18
millimeters, sorry. I think RF is 23, I'm just getting confused. But yeah, no, I think, again, it's definitely something that we want to keep an eye on and not be behind on. So I think, you know, taking a perfect example is like your FX9 and your S1H. They two kind of good examples of short flange back mounts with large format sensors. Yeah, again, it's something we definitely we're keeping an eye on ourselves, and I believe that the market will probably move in that direction if the stills market has anything to say with it. But I might be speaking out of term and certainly not speaking on behalf of Fujifilm. This is more my own opinion. But obviously, the longer PL mount, the longer flange focus was there to accommodate something that doesn't necessarily need to be accommodated anymore. Therefore, kind of there's logic to state that perhaps it won't necessarily be needed over, you know, the next decade, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like
do you have any thoughts?
So yeah, so.
And premise, we will have a LPL mount version.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think what we're waiting for is like something that's as robust as LPL and PL, but with even, you know, with that shorter flange as well. Because obviously, you know, not only do you get the benefits of adapting all of these, you know, all the other lenses onto it, but you're, you know, getting just better lens design in general because you're not needing those extra, you know, elements to correct for that larger flange.
One of the downsides of doing it is backward compatibility, because obviously if you've got a PL camera, you can't necessarily use shorter flange back lenses on it. So thinking of it from the user's perspective, when you don't necessarily change all of your cameras and lenses at one time, it might be something that takes a little bit longer to adopt for that reason.
Yeah.
But obviously, like I said, if you look forward 10 years and think where should everyone be in 10 years, then there's obviously logic to it.
Yep.
Just because when it comes down to designing a lens and all the design that goes into it, you can make it smaller and lighter and with the same level of performance or higher performance, because obviously sensor technology is going to continue to improve, we suspect. So we don't know where they're going to end up, but obviously the lenses have got to keep up with the sensors.
Yeah, exactly. So Christians has asked about anything for Canon EF or R mount, which obviously I know you guys covered a little bit in the presentation about the MK lenses getting the RF mount conversion, which is really exciting with the R5 and the Komodo around the corner as well.
Yeah, so for the EF mount, you can get a conversion for the XK 20-120. It's sold by Duclos, so it's not an official Fuji EF mount version, but we definitely
and also IBE.
And IBE, IBE make like a universal mount switching kit, so you can basically change the mount part to their UMS, and then you can change it to all sorts of different mounts, like E and EF, etc. And in regards to RF, sorry, I'm distracted. Just got told that my battery is running out. In regards to RF, as you mentioned, we've been working with Duclos in America again, and he has been building an RF mount for the MK lenses. So again, our short flange focus lenses, so 18 to 55-2.9 and a 50 to 135-2.9, they will be able to be converted to use on RF. And in terms of timeline, what we're trying to do is make that available around the same time as the Komodo lands and goes live. I know the Komodo is kind of getting a lot of talk at the moment, and there's some beta versions out in the wild. But yeah, so that's where we're considering. Yeah, so the XK 20-120 and the MK lenses are able to be used. I think with the cabrios, some of the other cabrios like the 19-90 can also the IBE have a kit that will allow that to work on EF as well.
Yeah, or there's tons of adapters you'll be able to use that with as well, just like off the shelf ones as well. But it depends what kind of system you want. If you want something that's more solid and robust and integrated, like the IBE adapter, or something that's more flexible in terms you don't have to change the mount every time.
But I think in terms of us making a native EF or RF, quite a difficult one just because of licensing, etc. But yeah, third-party conversions.
Yeah, I think so we're one of the only other. I think we're actually the only reseller other than Duclos that does their mods and stuff. So we do like the Zeiss Milvus mod, and we sell their components that only they sell. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we should be able to do that conversion in-house once that comes out as well. So anyone based in Europe will be able to send their MKs to us for us to do, rather than obviously having to send it to America to do Duclos, which is nice. So
yeah, we're going to make sure that there is a European solution either way. And one just comment to make on that is that it's kind of a one-way process. When you're using a Micro Four Thirds mount, you take off the E mount and place on the Micro Four Thirds mount, and it works. And if you're very, very careful with your screws, in theory, you can interchange those as many times as you need to change camera. With this RF adapter, just talking to Matt Duclos a few weeks ago, because of the difference in the flange back focus position, there's part of the MK lens actually needs to be modified. So it would definitely be a matter of sending the lens to an approved, trained installer who would install the RF lens, and I'm not sure whether it can be turned back into an E lens again afterwards. We'll find out for sure very soon, because it's obviously still in a prototype stage, and that whole process has obviously been slowed down because of Duclos staff haven't been working in the office.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think for a lot of owner ops of the Komodo and the R5 when it comes out as well, and all the other RF mount cameras, I think it would be a no-brainer, really, to be honest with you. Like if you're happy to be shooting in Super 35 mode, which with these higher resolution sensors, you can.
With the MK lenses on the Komodo, they'll cover the whole thing.
Yeah.
So the image circle, our spec is 28.5, but in reality, it's larger than that. And in basically pretty much every single focal iris position and focus position, in one of the shooting modes, so a 16:9 or a 17:9 crop shooting mode, it's going to cover 6K on the Komodo. I think from what we can tell in open gate, there may be some sort of light loss in the corners at certain situations, but you're talking like T22 focused on infinity, just because the image circle has got a slight bit of movement to it. But yeah, full 6K Komodo MK lenses should be a very good package.
I'm really hoping we can get an E mount or an RF mount for our camera that we use to do our lens tool, because at the moment we've only got PL. So it'd be really cool to get the MKs on there for that, so people can see real life visualizations of how that performs throughout the range.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, there's no other questions at the moment, unless there's anything else you guys want to chat about.
No, I think we've really covered everything. I mean, I can mention, I don't know in terms of audience whether there's any existing customers out there, but if you're not shooting at the moment and you want to have your lens looked at and serviced, our workshop is now working again. We opened last week, and my email address was on the last slide. But you can always get in touch with CVP. You can get in touch with us, and we can arrange to look at doing some servicing, etc. Just basically making use of the downtime, and obviously the workshop is following social distancing regulations, and there's very little or impossible chance of any kind of virus transmission, sending it into us and getting it back cleaned or serviced. Otherwise, I can't really. Maybe we could call it there and just thank everyone for their time watching, and if they have any questions, get in touch with CVP or myself or Kasai, and we're more than happy to help.
Awesome. Any questions, either reach out to these guys, or this will go live as a YouTube video, so just leave them in the comments there. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, I'll trim that bit